Hello and welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Priya and I are back. This is our third and final episode of season two of Conversations That Matter. And we're talking about being human in a digital world. First of all, thank you, everyone, for having been part of this journey for the last two Tuesdays. We've enjoyed the conversations both on offline and while we have been doing the live stream conversation. So it's been wonderful to receive your comments and your thoughts as well. So once again, welcome. And for those of you who are joining us live, pop in the chat where you're joining us from. Let us know, and also share what stood out for you for in the first two episodes. And if this is your first time joining us, then my name is Meenakshi Iyer, and I'm the founder and principal of North Star Solutions and Services LLC, physically located in Virginia in the US. And I serve as a personal agility, self-leadership, and change leadership coach, particularly focused on mid-level technology leaders, women in tech, and folks like myself who speak English as an additional language. And with me here is Priya Ramesh, who's my mentor coach, and that's how we met. And it's been an incredible honor and privilege to do this with you, Priya.
Thank you, Meenakshi. It's mutual.
Yeah, and Priya is located in Chennai, and so it's 7 p.m. your time, right, Priya?
Yes, 7 p.m. my time. And as always, enjoyed collaborating with Meenakshi. um, so I am a master coach from ICF and from EMCC, and run an organization called Orenda, where we focus a lot on leadership development in the space of coaching, facilitation, and systemic team coaching. That's the area of work. So when Meenakshi and I got started sometime in the beginning of last year, we did season 1, where we spoke about psychological safety at work. And we said there are some conversations that matter. And so we should have these conversations at least one every year. And that's how we continued. And this time it's about being human in a digital world. So this is episode 3 of season 2. And episode 1 essentially was about where we spoke about what does it mean to be human, especially with relation to our own personal spaces and personal relationships. So how has the digital world really changed the equation with ourselves? What has it cost us? What can we still do to continue to being human? Meenakshi, inviting you to talk a little bit about maybe something that you took away from episode 1 and flow into episode 2.
Uh, First of all, Priya, I loved how we co-created the design of this whole conversation series this time, and I think we talked about it in the first episode. You know, we start with self, and then we take it we expand it one more layer, and then we expand it further, which is what we're going to be doing today. So that design really resonated with me, given the fact that we started with ourselves. Um, and I think there were a lot of aha moments in our first conversation, episode 1, where we delved deeper into the impact of the digital world and tech on our relationship with ourselves. And I think my all-time favorite is the little sort of alliteration that you did, that when you shared how we tend to fill every gap with a gadget. I think that is my all-time favorite takeaway, if you will. And I actually pay attention to that now when I do that. Have I started doing less of it? That's a journey. But every time I hear Priya's voice in my head, oh, I'm filling a gap with a gadget. So that's for sure. How about you?
So it's interesting. I think what came out of session one, episode one, was really saying how can we be intentional about the time that we spend with ourselves,
Yeah.
right? How do we connect more to real experiences than make believe ones which
Yes.
the gadgets offer us? And also, I think the one thing that stood out for me was technology takes as much space as you give it. And
Yes.
those are your words, right, Meenakshi? Which is so true.
Yes.
And it's not even it's not, and this is so true to what we are speaking about today as well, is that technology takes up our personal space, our workspace, and the social spaces that we inhabit.
Yes.
And it's just about us being mindful about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, as you said that, there was another thing that came back to me is I think you had said this. Yes, you had said this. You said we're so busy showing up for others. How are we showing up for ourselves?
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
a fantastic reflection point, I would say.
In episode two, we spoke a lot about, we expanded the personal space to saying, okay, what's the other space that we occupy, which is our workspace. We spend a good amount of time there. So, how has work relationships, ways of working, how has it changed? And how do we actually build relationships at work? Given how much we depend on technology for work these days. And uh, so I think that was a very important conversation about not just saying that we do away with technology. It's not an either or. What we are saying really is, how do we continue to bring in the humaneness that we intrinsically possess, about empathy, connectedness. So now we are finding new ways to connect and build and nurture those workspace relationship, right? And empathy being a two-way street. How we can still continue to write an email in response to the person, uh, more than to just that email itself,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes. I still remember
That
the moment
stays.
you said that, and I still remember that experience of hearing that for the first time. Absolutely,
Yeah.
Priya. And that's such a powerful reframe. I'd say what you shared is, we. It's so easy to hide behind a screen or behind a
Yeah.
device, but then if you really paid attention to, or brought into our consciousness that we are actually responding or interacting with a human being at the other end,
Yes.
uh, the quality of our response and the quality of our engagement will definitely shift for the better. Yeah. And one of the takeaways that we had shared was how it's important that we leverage technology to really deepen human relationships. We talked about how technology, the human element, is at the core of all technology that we develop,
Absolutely.
and how it's important to always remember that as we use technology at work. So yeah, yeah. Um, it's lovely to sort of reflect back. Hard to believe it's just been 2 weeks ago, that we've been having this conversation. There's a lot to take in, and I think there's a lot to reflect on and process as we go on. Um, so thank you for doing that. And once again, we want to welcome everyone that's joining us live, and we are live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. And in case you miss it, in case you are not able to join us live, we hope you will watch the recording, and we'd love to hear your comments and thoughts. And those of you that are joining us live right now, please pop in the chat and let us know where you're joining us from, and what has resonated with you so far, and what are your thoughts on being human in a digital world? Yeah, love to hear. And I'm going to keep an eye on the chat and the comments as well. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah,
It's a good time now to shift gears and say, okay, how do we expand our horizon and look at one, the social spaces that we inhabit, and how has that changed for us given the role of technology in our worlds, and how do we really operate in the ecosystem?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
So, what are your initial thoughts, Meenakshi, as we delve into this topic?
Yeah. Before I answer that, I also wanted to take a minute to share with everyone in case there's someone that's joining us for the first time. We every episode you'll notice is we sort of structure the conversation on 4 or 5 key questions. So we start with looking at how has tech encroached the space that we're talking about and what's happening, and then we look at how has that changed our relationship with in the context, and what are the implications because of that, and what does it really, and then we look at, okay, what does it really mean to be human, and then we sort of um, wrap up with some of our thoughts around what we like to call as, okay, what are some solutions, or what are some ways in which we can continue to remain human in this digital world. So we'll be taking this same approach in today's conversation as well. And to your question, Priya, when I think about ecosystems and when I think about social spaces, a few things that come to mind are um, like some of the ecosystems, if you will, are shopping or using public transportation. There are so many options, and they're all driven by tech. You can shop online. You don't have to physically go into a store, and things just land at your front door, almost
Yes.
miraculously. Right.
Yes.
So our transactions, our financial transactions,
Yes.
banking for that matter, right? I can't
Mm-hmm.
remember the last time I had to physically go into a branch of my bank. So there's so much that you can do behind a screen, like we are talking today, for example, that it it's easy for me. I'm speaking for myself. It's easy for me to um, lose touch with the reality that it is actually another human being or a bunch of human beings that are making stuff happen, even if we are behind a screen, right? And the other thing, I think about often is when we order food, takeout or takeaway food. I think about this even when you're in a restaurant, for example. Once you, and this is something I remember my mother talking about. Cooking is very sacred because there's a lot of energy that goes into it, and so you really have to be in a positive frame of mind when you're cooking, and that's something I've learned from her, and I've noticed that when I cook and if I'm not in a great mood, the stuff doesn't turn out great. So I think about that a lot when we eat out or we order food, because the entire delivery chain, more often than not, people are stressed. Right from the person cooking your food to the person who's delivering your food. So that I often wonder, what is it that I'm ingesting? So that's a sort of a sidebar. But all of these ecosystems are affected, right? So those are some of the considerations that I have. So when I think about it, then I think about, okay, who and how I trust, that has shifted. And then how I engage with others, engage with these ecosystems. And I'm in some, I may be the customer, in some I may have a different role. And how do I do business? So like my own business is completely virtual. And as a coach, as a mentor, as a trainer, the you know there's an expectation that people are going to trust me even if they can't meet me in person, and to still make it all work, right? So I think the 2 or 3 key elements is, I think the fundamental element for me is really, as I'm thinking about it now, is who and how I trust, and the role that I'm borrowing Erica Davin's the title of the book, Digital Body Language. That plays a big role in how we continue to engage and do business.
Mm.
How about you?
Yeah, so I was just thinking as you spoke, and just before this call, I visited my local supermarket physically.
Mm,
And it was interesting that at it's evening in India,
mm,
and you have people who stroll by, you have children playing in the park, and somehow the supermarket is an important social space that you can go to, if nothing, just to say hi. You will come back having said hi to somebody there.
yes,
And that's so interesting because it sort of just lifts you up,
yes,
you know so if I it may not be the same experience if I go early morning, but this time of the day, the evening, where people are, there is busyness, people
yes,
have to rush home after work picking up grocery. But if you have nothing to do, you just have to go to the supermarket, just walk around, and because it's a smaller community in the area, you'll meet someone.
yes.
And I remember reading, the book Creating Flow
Mm.
by um, Csikszentmihalyi. I hope I've
Yes,
pronounced
yes,
his name
yes,
right. Yeah,
yes. Csikszentmihalyi.
who he spoke about flow, and he says it is an effort, and it requires focus, and it requires you to exercise a certain part of your brain and body, mind, all of it, when you are socially interacting with someone. And I think that is so true, because it's quite possible that we can sit behind the closed door, have your food delivered, grocery delivered, clothes delivered, everything delivered at your doorstep, because we can now. I mean,
Mm.
technology has advanced so much. With just a click, everything arrives. Yeah, but even there is an opportunity for a human interaction. The person
Yes,
who delivers, for example,
yeah.
there is an option to say hello, how are you.
Mm.
So even in a so this visit to the supermarket today really brought this to life, saying that how we inhabit social spaces these days, I think it's about being very conscious of that. There's a lot of advantages in doing that.
Mm.
I'm not just saying physical space, I'm also saying virtual.
Yes,
How do we intentionally, like you said earlier on sometime, how do we intentionally create those spaces, to be in those spaces,
mm. Yes,
right? which
yes.
which it does something to us for sure.
Mm.
Human interaction, connectedness, I think there's a sense of belongingness, all of that comes, and which are all very, being very human, right?
Yes, yes.
Intangible though it may be, it's something that just came alive for me as we
Hmm.
spoke.
Yeah. We're all energy beings at the end of the day,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And when we do step out and when we are in the presence of others, we experience that energy, and there is an exchange of energy, and that's what we experience.
Hmm.
And so I
So when you
remember,
speak,
yeah,
sorry, go on.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just thinking about ecosystems as well and social spaces. Um, social public spaces have moved into home.
Say more.
For example, there are lots of people who are making videos, who the pandemic has created a lot of celebrities, because you can
Mm.
sit at home and create videos and stuff, which is great for talent. But what I'm seeing is, what I'm consuming a lot, if I'm not mindful, is and it's an observation that people's personal lives are out on the
Mm.
social stage
Yes, yes.
for public consumption,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So yeah, I think that's something that I've been observing.
Privacy has taken on a whole new
Absolutely.
layer of meaning.
Mm.
Yeah, that's true. And it's redefined. It kind of goes back into something we touched on in episode one. It that has redefined our own relationship with ourselves,
Absolutely. I
right?
think so.
And that reflects in how we engage in these ecosystems, as an example. So
Hmm. Hmm.
um, when you were talking about going to the supermarket, I remember in when I was in India recently. I had the opportunity. So I was visiting my mom in Kerala, and for the first few days, it was so hot that I said, okay, I'm just going to stay home. But one day we actually stepped out, and because it had, I think it had somehow the weather was tolerable, and there was a breeze, and so we decided to step out, and we went to the local temple. It was just walked a bit from where she lives, and came back, and both of us felt that our spirits were lifted.
Hmm.
And it's not that I mean, obviously, because she's the one who lives there, she knows more people than I do. I'm the visitor. But just meeting people that, just like you said, just seeing life around you,
Absolutely. I think
right?
that's
And it
the
was,
key.
yes, and it was a day, oh yeah, it was a day before Vishu. So there was people buying flowers, people going to the temple, making sure they had everything for the celebration
Festival.
and all of that. Yes. So it was a very different kind of energy, and both of us felt that and
Hmm.
experienced that. So that was what I was thinking about when you talked about your trip to the supermarket.
Supermarket, yeah.
I
Yeah.
see. Oh,
Darshini is here.
yes. Hi, Darshini. Thank you for joining us live. And we'd love to hear your thoughts and questions as well. So keep chiming in. Um, yeah, and it's also, when you talked about how people, like when you make videos and things like that, you were really taking, I love what you said. You are bringing others into your home or into your space in a way, and then
Mhm.
you're also taking your space and you're putting
Yeah.
it out there.
Yeah.
And that also to me is an indicator of what trust looks like. I
Mm.
think that we find it easier to, I know you and I have talked about this, like getting into a cab or getting into an Uber or Ola or whatever it may be. um, 10 years ago, getting into a stranger's car is something that would have been unthinkable.
Absolutely.
But now apparently it's 100% safe just because there's a technology app that supports it.
Absolutely. Yes.
So it seems like tech has opened up new doorways of trust.
Hmm. Hmm. And this brings up a very important point that, for example, my father, who is 85 now, is has a tech aversion, right? So he does not want to do business through technology. So for him, it's a real challenge because he has to physically go to the bank. I know
Yes.
we can always say that, you keep up with times and, my mom can do it, so why can't he? But really, the point being, generationally, um, things have changed. And it is really hard for people of older generation to keep up with this.
Yes.
And he has retired. He was a banker. He's retired many years ago. But even before this technology boom, he wanted to keep visiting the bank.
Yes.
Once a week, he'll go to the branch. And why? Really nothing. Just has to hand over a check or just wants to go and come back.
Yes.
So that's an important social space for him.
Yes. Yes.
And even now, till date, he keeps going back. So it's very interesting how different generations have leveraged technology
Yes.
and the struggles that come along with it.
Yeah. Yeah. That just made me chuckle because it is true. the act of depositing a check is just an excuse for being in a space that's familiar to you and having
Yes.
that enjoying those social interactions that come through
Yeah. Yeah.
that process. Absolutely. And it is a known um, it's a known fact, and social
Mm,
isolation is amongst the world's one of the leading causes for ill health, both physical and mental.
mm, mm,
And so for example, here in the US, there is a nonprofit organization called Meals on Wheels. And what they do is volunteers go and deliver meals to people who either live by themselves or cannot are not able to cook for themselves.
mhm.
And sometimes, especially for older adults who live by themselves, that volunteer is probably the only person that they may
They
speak to
meet.
in
Mm,
in the during the day, or in that time period.
mm,
Um, and I know that during COVID, that was a big challenge for people who live by themselves,
mm,
regardless of their age group or generation, or regardless of how technology friendly they are. Because after a certain point, you do miss that in
mm,
person interaction. And so, isolation and social isolation, and even the term, as I'm speaking, like, and the World Health Organization tried. They came in too late, too little, too late, because the term everybody started using was social distancing. It was actually physical distancing is the correct terminology.
absolutely.
Yeah, and that was a missed opportunity. But anyway, so that's the importance of the in person, and so how we are sort of learning new behaviors, if you will, in a way,
Hmm.
as we use more of this technology. Um, on one hand, it brings people together.
Yes.
Um, like every time I use Uber or any ride hailing service, I meet a new person. There's opportunity for a new conversation and opportunity to learn something about the person,
Yeah. Yeah.
which would have happened even if I had hailed a regular cab, right? A yellow cab or a black and yellow, whatever.
Mm,
Um, this is just another way of creating that opportunity, but it also it creates access in some
mm,
points, and I think it also interferes with our being in a here and now.
nice. It interferes with our being in the here and now. I think that's very powerful because we are experiencing the benefits of interconnectedness, right? We for example, even during the pandemic, we really now understand the power of interconnectedness, right? Because something that happened in one part of the world almost immediately touched every corner of the world. So we can't take away the fact that we are parts of the whole. We are part of the ecosystem. We impact the ecosystem. The ecosystem impacts us. So there's this huge amount of benefit in that.
Yes.
Vaccines could reach places. Lots of things, great things could happen. I could get to know of what's happening in the other end of the world.
Yes.
But what I would really caution myself here is to say, am I, one of the innate human qualities is our power for to discriminate or our discriminative powers. When I say discriminate, not one against the other, what I really mean is how do we understand the difference between what is useful for us? You talked about interference, right? What interferes versus what can support or enable.
Yes. Yes. Ah, that was beautiful. So, what you really, if I am understanding you correctly, you're talking about the power of discernment that we have, right?
Discernment.
Right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
to figure out when it's useful to us and when it's not. And,
Yeah.
you know, um, uh, I'm trying to recall. Louise Evans, I think that's the name. So she has this concept of the 5 chairs. If you've heard her TED talk,
Mhm.
it's like we have choices, 5 different choices of showing up in any,
Yes.
and she has
Yes.
a talk about. And one of the stories she narrates as part of that, and I have experienced this, is she talks about, I think it's her niece or a female relative much younger than her. It's a different generation. She had taken her out
Yes.
to the opera or something,
Yeah,
and
that's right.
she was trying. Remember that? So she was trying to sit. They were sitting next to each other, and she really wanted to make a good impression on her. And Louise was trying to talk to her, and she noticed that this younger woman was heads down into her phone, and she had built up all these stories about what the younger woman was doing. And it turns out, and then a few minutes later, the younger woman, lifts her head up from the phone and says something to Louise, which totally delights her and shocks her at the same time. All that young woman was doing was researching about the opera or whatever art they had come to see, and she had, exactly to your point, it started off looking like it was interfering with her being in the here and now, but what she was really doing was augmenting her experience by finding out
Mm.
something else
Mm.
about what they were experiencing, and
Mm.
that information really added a whole another dimension to their experience in a positive sense.
Right.
And I find myself doing that a lot. So if I'm watching something on TV, and um, if it's a show or whatever, I would research the actors and the characters, um, and if it's like even if it's loosely based on a true story, then I want to learn about what the original incident or story was. And as much as I'm not being in the here and now, it really augments my experience in that
Definitely.
moment,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But there's a point up to, like, I have to watch myself, otherwise I'm really multitasking, and then it's not
Mm.
very effective. So I love what you said about that, because it's the same power that can go either way, right?
Absolutely. So actually, that throws up this question about what's the underbelly of technology, right?
Yes.
Um, that we need to be mindful of. What are your thoughts?
To me, it goes back to being aware of why I'm doing what I'm doing. First of all, the fact that I'm doing that, being mindful that you know I wake up, and within the first hour I am checking my phone, I am looking at WhatsApp messages and LinkedIn, because that kind of, I fought that for a while, so I had this thing of, okay, I'm not going to look at that. And but now I've realized that that's one of the ways I feel connected with everything that's happening in India, for example. And that's important to me. So I'm not going to fight it, but at the same time, I make sure that I don't look at the news,
Mm.
any of
Mm.
the news, till at least 8 or 9 in the morning.
Mm.
Um, so I think really being, and then it's an adjustment. It's like one of my favorite phrases, sense and respond. It's really to being aware of, well, what is it that I'm doing? Okay, I'm checking my phone, and why am I doing this? Okay, I have a reason. And if it's, I don't have to prove anything to anyone, but I have to be aware of what is it that I'm doing. How am I using that technology, to what end? And what is the impact that I'm creating around me? So in my case, for example, my morning, I have time by myself for at least the first couple of hours after I've woken up. So even if I end up reacting to something I've read in a message or something, I'm not spilling it on anyone else, because I have the time to myself.
Mm.
So being aware of that, I think is one of the ways in which I can steer clear of the
Mm.
underbelly. The dark side of tech is, I think, getting to a point where you lose a sense of humanity, because like you
Mm.
order stuff and stuff shows up outside your door, Here in the US, they're even experimenting with drone deliveries. So it's completely automated. The picking of your things, the packing of your things is also, they're introducing robots in that process, and deliveries being done by drones. It's being experimented in several geographies in the US, for example, and different parts of the world, really. So if you're eliminating all human contact in every step of the process, um, you lose sight of what it is that you're really doing. And one of the things I had noted down as we were coming to this conversation is we live in a world of instant gratification,
Absolutely.
right? And I think that technology sort of accelerates that.
Mm,
And I'm not sure I'm too pleased with that, to be honest.
mm, mm.
How about you?
Yeah, I think it's very powerful because just recognizing that we spoke about tolerance and impatience, um, and to add to that, Meenakshi, I think there's another dimension of ourselves as human beings, which is we're very quick now to judge what's happening
Hmm.
because everything that we see around us is seen picture perfect almost.
Yes. Yes.
All the images, and and there's no space for imperfection. There's
Hmm.
everything is you look the best, you are spot on because you can correct all of this
Hmm. Yes.
and you can make it just right. So sometimes I wonder when I go to a social gathering, and that's the space that I'm occupying, social space, you know, who am I meeting here? Do I really know this person?
Hmm.
Or is it a persona that's been created on the social stage?
Hmm.
And I'm saying stage very consciously because your stage is somewhere higher than the ground with the
Yes.
lights on you. It's a very different experience than on the ground, eye level, meeting this person. So I really wonder, who am I actually meeting now?
Hmm.
Am I meeting this picture perfect? And we all know how much this instant gratification that you spoke about, people post the best pictures on social media.
Hmm.
And you come back wondering, oh, I didn't do this, or I didn't go there, oh, I didn't take a good picture.
Hmm.
Somehow, our own shortcomings, our own what's best in us is not coming through.
Wow. Hmm. That's so true. That's so true.
So I'm just wondering, right? How do we in this space continue to, and when we say, what does it mean to be human? It's really about our ability to discern good from bad, right from wrong, relevant to irrelevant, using our faculties to really go through the deluge of information that's coming, to
Hmm.
sieve through. Um, to be human is to also understand that the interconnectedness of the ecosystem, right? So what,
Hmm.
you know, aside, right? Just a thought just popped up. For example, a social cause
Hmm.
or charity or something that's happening, something devastating that's happening somewhere. It's so easy for us using social media to garner interest, to
Yes.
get the all of that. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so that's been fantastic that we've been able to do that, and we realize that it's easy for us to talk about in an activist mode
Hmm.
because we're sitting behind something and we're just we're not really responsible, we're not taking responsibility,
Yes.
we're being irresponsible in how we share our thoughts and views, not realizing that we are part of that ecosystem. So,
Yeah.
what is it that I can do to contribute positively? What's my responsibility towards the greater whole
Hmm.
of the ecosystem? And I think there's opportunities there for us to show up as to be human.
Yeah. Yeah. Could not agree with you more. And when you talked about, um, you mentioned it's easy for us to get into sort of the activist mode, and easy to just say things
Yeah.
because, and then not take responsibility for it.
Mm-hmm.
And this brings me, and this is one of the things we had talked about as we were planning for this, is the whole um, uh, challenge with disinformation. And that's
Mm.
another, the dark side of technology, if you will. We've seen it, especially over the past 4 or 5 years, how it's interfered with um, our electoral systems around the world, um, how it's interfered with geopolitics, what's happening. It's because there's what, close to 8 billion people on the planet, and it's hard to find anyone without a device in their hands. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. It doesn't matter what socio-economic stratum they come from. Each of us has access to a
Mm-hmm.
phone, which is internet enabled, and so we've all become, in a way, citizen journalists, and there's so much of
Mm.
vigilantism that's on the rise, and some of it is good, and some of it is like, if something is going on, you'd find more people trying to film it than
Mm.
people who would actively engage with it and try to stop what's happening if it's a bad thing, for example, right? And the challenge with disinformation is that it spreads very easily and more quickly because we have all this technology that's readily available, and it's very hard for a layperson to be discerning in the moment,
Yes.
and really understand what to believe and what not,
Yes.
right? Um, and the responsibility piece that you talked about, and I remember reading this, and actually it's one of these global organizations that put out a PSA, a public service announcement, around um, internet behavior, or
Mm.
suggested internet behavior, meaning, especially when we forward things now with WhatsApp and other messaging apps, the proliferation of these apps, it's so easy to forward things, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and so one of the things they had said was, when you see something, read it, understand it, and before you forward it, take ask these 2 3 questions. Is What is the source of this information? Is the source trustworthy?
Mm-hmm.
How you determine trustworthy, that itself is a sort of a muddy area, I would say. But the request that they're making is, don't just forward it, because a lot of
Mm.
us tend to forward without even reading. Like, we might read the first few sentences and we just forward,
Absolutely.
right? So they say, it's literally like, stop, pause, and like really look at it, consider the source, and consider, because I remember receiving a forward once about, oh, there's a spate of burglaries in your neighborhood. And I actually clicked on the message that I'd received as a forward. It was an article, a newspaper article. I clicked on the hyperlink, clicked on another link, went, which took me to the source of the article. Turns out it was from 4 years ago.
Mm.
So, but you only see the headline and how
Yes.
things, and what you can see on a smartphone. And I struggled with that. So I actually let the person who forwarded it to me in that group, I let them know, hey, looks like this is from 4 years ago.
Mm.
I just stated that because several of us in that group lived in that neighborhood.
Mm.
And it was an unnecessary source of, an untrue source of panic for us.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
So really being, so to your point about how might we be responsible, is really taking the time
Mm-hmm.
to do a little bit of research. If you're going to forward, do the research, because then you are the source of that information for that next person.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of times I think we absolve ourselves of that responsibility by saying, oh, it was a forward.
Yeah. And it's very strange. If it's forwarded by somebody you know,
Hmm.
somehow you just trust that information.
Yes, isn't it? Don't we do that? Yeah.
So it's oh, she sent it or he sent it. It's quite possible that he or she hasn't really looked at it, you know, um, and and I know that not being responsible has got a lot of implications.
Mm,
Uh, it can incite violence.
yes.
It can really do harm to the society.
Mm,
So I think it's very important that the word responsibility is, if you really look at it, is our ability to respond,
mm,
is responsibility, and we have the ability to respond, not react.
yes.
So it's really that you talked about taking pauses with oneself, and I'm saying even here, even in social spaces, let's get real first. Let's pause and really use our ability to respond, to discern, and to therefore respond.
Mm,
And I think that's where we can sort of be more socially responsible citizens. Because, like we said earlier, we are part of an ecosystem. So,
mm,
our action is in some way going to impact the ecosystem, whether it's a forward or it is something that you have actually spoken. Um, in some ways we are responsible. So I think being human is about taking that responsibility.
mm. I love that. Being human is taking that is about taking that responsibility. Yeah, yeah. Um, what are some other um, like? What's the one other change you're noticing in how we engage with our systems, with our ecosystems and social spaces?
I think for me, this whole thing about um, real unreal,
Hmm.
like I mentioned earlier, I really don't know when I'm in a social gathering how much of this is real. What's
Hmm.
the And I can sense a pressure for everybody to be a certain way,
Hmm.
moving away from who they truly are.
Hmm.
Sometimes we speak a lot about individuality, uniqueness that each of us have, but somehow, if we're not careful, I see we are creating clones everywhere,
Yes. Yes.
and that sort of scares me a bit.
Hmm.
Everyone's looking pretty much the same, everyone's saying a lot of similar things, doing similar things. I'm not saying they should be dissimilar. All I'm saying is I struggle to therefore sometimes connect with the real person.
Hmm.
And therefore, I think each time it comes back to just stepping back and saying, okay, who's the person behind this persona, facade?
Hmm. Hmm.
And really connecting to the person behind that,
Yes.
for me,
Yes.
would be very important.
Hmm. So, what's coming up for me as I heard you say that is in social spaces versus these larger ecosystems, like let's say banking or shopping or ride sharing, the element of trust
Mm.
seems to be the common thread.
Hmm.
Uh, so in social spaces, when you're in interacting with others, trust is harder to build or earn, it seems like. That's what I'm hearing. Whereas in these other ecosystems, trust is somehow built into the technology itself, it looks like.
I don't know whether it increases trust.
Hmm.
I think it's about, sometimes you don't have a choice. If I have to move from one place to another, I just better
Hmm.
trust this,
Hmm.
right? My app. I just better trust it because, one, it's convenient. it's easy to, and in some cases, in a lot of cases, the stakes are low.
Ah, that's a good point.
But when it's a human to human connection, um, it's very different. The stakes are pretty high there.
Yes, yes.
So I have a friend we've been trying to meet for over a year for coffee. Over a year, and I'm not exaggerating. And before that, you can blame it on pandemic. There was just no way to meet, right? So I said, every time, why do I have to see? I want to build that relationship. I think it's an important relationship because I'm seeing some connect. We talked about energy beings, right? There's some connect with this person I'd like to build, not because she is this or that or she's achieved this. As a person, there are some things that she has said and how she sort of, her being spoke to me. And I said, okay, so why do I have to wait? I can do this over a phone. I mean, I'm still using technology in that sense. I'm fixing time. And we took 2 days to fix a convenient time for both of us to speak. But we spoke. And for me, that's a big achievement, Meenakshi, in when it comes to social interaction.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
That this is recognizing that this is an important relationship, and I can't wait for things to happen. I've got to make it happen, and therefore investing in that relationship. So I felt good at the end of it. Actually, both of us felt good, and we just said, "Why couldn't we have done this before?"
Well, the universe
So
apparently hadn't planned it for you.
absolutely, or I think we sort of found some excuse. I don't know what it was, right? But I think that's really important that we take the time to make meaningful connections in our social spaces.
Yeah, yeah. And that goes back to intent. We talked about that in the first episode, I think. Um, Technology is only an enabler, but we are the point of origin
Absolutely.
of whatever it may be, right? The action that we want to take. Um, I do want to do a quick time check. So we've
Do that.
been at this for about 50 minutes, 45 minutes. And there are some tech issues. So I just saw that we have Bobby Ferrari, who's joined us from Colorado in the US. I'm not somehow able to respond to your comments, Bobby, but thank you for being here, and would love to hear your thoughts. And thank you for sharing the conversation out in your network as well. And we have Avinash here. Hey, Avinash. He says, I personally find that I trust tech's ability to facilitate a transaction of any kind, but beyond that, there's a constant caution in the mind, and that can be exhausting.
Yeah. And your mind's cautioning you because the stakes are probably high there. But I love the fact that we can use technology because it helps us to facilitate a transaction.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Avinash. And we all have adopted a sort of like a different set of behaviors to engage with this technology. And this was something we talked about. Like, we don't seem to think twice before doing that. Like, we use so many different apps, and while most of them have the same sort of design features, but some of them have differences, and we adapt. But then I think the biggest thing we can do to be human in a digital world is to bring that same level of patience when interacting with other humans.
Yeah. Yeah.
The fact that each of us is different and we all have a different way of working, and that we choose to invest the time to figure that out for each other as well.
And this connects to the point of instant gratification that you spoke about, right? Where we are saying that we don't have to be tolerant, we don't have to be patient because it's just a click and it's
Yeah.
all out there.
Yes. Yes.
But when it comes to human beings and really connecting with a human being, it's not so straightforward.
Correct.
It's a very, you're connecting with somebody who's as dynamic as you are,
Mm.
as in some ways complex as you are, and that requires some amount of, what shall I say, investment,
Mm.
um, time, energy, space, um, and that's where our sense of tolerance comes, right? And we can't be impatient with another human being.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm.
the world of Instamarts. Human beings can, if you're not mindful, lose the race.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, um, how would you summarize this then? What does it mean to be human when everything around you, like most of our ecosystems, involve some kind of, if you want to shop, if you want to eat, if you want to go somewhere, book travel to go, let's say, travel internationally. So we tend to use the internet or some technology to get all our work done. So with everything that we've shared today, what's rising up to the top for you in terms of what does it mean to be human in this world?
I think in the ecospace, I mean, ecosystem, social spaces, I think my ability to connect with my values, connect, discern right from wrong, good from bad, relevant to irrelevant, appropriate to inappropriate, my ability to discern, my, as a human being, my, what you said, technology takes as much space as you give it. So really consciously looking at how much space am I giving it,
Mm.
and am I allowing it to interfere, or am I using it as an enabler?
Mm. Mm.
Do I want to lose myself in all that's happening, or can I still, in the social spaces and ecosystems, you can't take away the episode one, which is we're talking about me and personal self, right?
Yes, yes.
It's our connection with ourselves that can help us connect in the social spaces with the ecosystem. So it starts there, and it enables us to show up the way we want to show up in social spaces as well.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
What's
Yeah,
what's coming up for you, Meenakshi?
very similar, Priya. I think the for me it's about the intent and the self awareness and being connected to oneself. I think to me that's, and like you said, so I'm pretty aligned to what you said there. I don't have anything else to add, because we may be talking about the ecosystem, but it all starts with self. And if each of us were
Yeah.
that connected and that considerate, connected to ourselves and considerate about others, I think we would be it will be a much different world, right? So yeah,
Nice. Connect with self and considerate to others.
yeah,
And that's about being human, right?
yes. I just realized it was an alliteration. I didn't plan it. Yeah,
Fabulous.
yeah. So I think we've covered that, but as we begin to wrap up our conversation, while I do that, I just want to take a moment once again to thank everyone that's joined us live. And if you have just now joined us, well, you don't have to worry. You can catch all the replay of these conversations on YouTube. And if you've just now joined us, well, welcome. We are currently live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, and all the replays will be available on YouTube. Um, and this is our concluding episode in this conversation that matters, um, around the topic of being human in a digital world. And we would hope that we are able to continue this conversation with everyone offline on the various channels and platforms. And we'd also love for you to connect with us on LinkedIn if this is your first time meeting us. And I see a message from Avinash, and he says, "Ooh, for the dark side of tech, watch Black Mirror." Yes, I've heard about it. At the moment, I'm protecting my own sanity and not watching it, Avinash. It's a good show. I've heard about it.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, like you said, Meenakshi, I think what I want to invite anyone who's here or who's going to listen to it later is to really connect with who you are as a human and what defines you as a person, right? It's not the work that you do, it's not the role, it's not your position. It's really who you are as a person. And I would invite everybody to let that shine through and find ways to be human, while while using technology as an enabler, as a supporting tool or mechanism, if you may call it. But let's not lose sight of who we are and who we innately can become as a person.
Yeah,
That's where I want to leave the audience with.
that's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Um, one of the things I've been struggling with a lot in this operating in this digital world is dealing. So while I enjoy the positive aspects of technology, like for example, the fact that you and I are connected, Priya, and we're doing this, and we've been doing this is our second time doing this together, and other similar collaborative work. All of this is made possible by technology.
Absolutely.
Right? So I'm definitely, I've greatly benefited from being part of the tech community and being a consumer of the tech world. But at the same time, I think I also am exposed more and more, uh, like almost all of us, to all the not so great stuff happening in the world as well. Whether I want to know about it, and as soon as it's happening or not, it is in front of me, right? So there's been a great deal of sort of sorrow, a combination of all sorts of emotions, survivor's guilt, a sense of helplessness, not being able to influence the situation to create a positive outcome, all of that. And then I actually took a picture of this. I came across this post a few times, and then yesterday, and I thought, oh wow, it's so timely. So it's from the Talmud, which is a Jewish religious text, and it says, and I'm reading it as it is, and it's a post, and I'm happy to share it. It says, "Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it." That's the message. So for me, there was hope. I drew solace from the first sentence where it says, "Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now." Just staying focused on that one thing that I can do within my space, within my ecosystem, and just staying focused on that. I keep coming back to this message sort of
Lifts you.
yes, and it also speaks to one of the big concerns I have. So it helps me navigate that.
Wow, quite powerful actually. And yeah, I think we can't forget that we are, again, going back to the same thing, that we are part of the ecosystem. We are part of the whole. And yeah, let's connect more deeply,
Yeah,
more deeply with oneself, with others, with our ecosystem. So we hope to make the world a better place.
absolutely. Yep. And thank you so much for doing this with me, Priya.
Thank you, and a big thanks to anyone who's joined us. Meenakshi and I really felt this conversation matters to us, and so we bring this forth to you. Not in a way to provide answers or solutions,
Yeah.
but mainly to just have a conversation, trigger a few thoughts, allow you to reflect, and find your own ways of being human in a digital world.
So beautifully said. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Meenakshi. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Take care and be well. And we'd love to hear your thoughts and insights on as you watch the replays of today's episode and the two earlier episodes. So once again, thank you so much. And until next time, take care and be well. Bye for now.
Bye bye.